Hey guys, welcome back to the studio for another lesson. Today we'll be diving a little deeper into the PDF resource from last week's lesson on rhythm changes. We'll kick things off by going over a phrase outline using lines from the resource over key sections of the changes. Then I'll show you how you can use this to practice improvising within those constraints by coming up with phrases that fit between the ones we've set down in the outline. We'll do this for each 8-bar section before wrapping things up with an etude that combines what we practiced into a chorus of rhythm changes that incorporates both phrases from the resource and ones that we've discovered through practicing other elements of bebop. You guys ready? Let's get into it. Last week's lesson was all about learning phrases from the resource that we can slot in at key points in the chord changes. If you've had a chance to look at that document, you'll have already seen the phrase outlines that I'd included there for you to practice incorporating my phrases into your improvisations. Just in case you haven't though, let's first take a look at an example phrase outline using the licks that I taught you in last week's lesson. Here's what that sounds like. The goal when practicing this way is to learn and internalize some new language into your improvised solos. I mentioned last time that this language can come from any number of places, but in our case, we'll be using example phrases from the resource that came with last week's lesson. And once you have this phrasing structure down and you've got these lines well and truly in your ears, you can move on to what comes next. In between these pre-written ideas, we're going to try to come up with some licks that fit and weave these phrases together in a way that sounds natural. In between last week's lesson and today, I spent some of my own time practicing this and writing out some of my favorite things that I came up with. Here's an example of where my ears wanted to take the phrase outline for the A section. If you've never done this kind of practice before, it can be a lot more challenging than you might think. Since you're locked into not only resolving a pre-written phrase in a specific way, but also need to get into another one in just the same way, it sets up a puzzle that you need to solve in real time. My best advice for practicing this and improvising while doing it is to go super slow and really focus on where your ear wants to take you. That's why it's absolutely essential for you to have the phrases from the outline fully internalized before taking this step. Don't forget, what you're listening to and seeing on screen in these examples is the end result of my own practice with this, and the tempo you just heard isn't necessarily realistic for practice when you're working through this as an exercise. And that being said, check out this next example of some lines that I heard when practicing the second A section. It can be really tricky to keep your lines from getting too long when you're practicing this. And make sure to not only practice connecting or alighting phrases into one another, but also leaving some space so that things sound more natural and singable. Up next, let's check out some material that I came up with when working this out over the bridge and the last A section. For these next 8 bars, I decided to vary the phrasing structure a bit so that I'd have to find a way to connect the bridge to the last A while leaving some natural sounding space like I would in an ideal improvised solo. This can be really tricky, so I'd recommend spending extra time with sections of the outlines in the PDF resource that deviate from the typical phrasing structure like this. Here's an example of some lines that I enjoyed from my practice sessions over the bridge. See what I mean about the tendency for lines to get a little long if you're not careful? In this case, I think it's all right because landing hard on the downbeat for the last A section gives me the opportunity to leave just a little space before picking things up again. I'll show you one more example so you can see how I connected the last A section to that super long phrase from the bridge. Here's what it sounds like. Up next, we'll see how this all sounds when we put these examples together to play an etude over the entire form. Before we get to that though, I need to give a quick shout out to TRUEFIRE.com for supporting the channel. TRUEFIRE is an online lesson library that's host to literally thousands of courses on a wide range of musical topics from some really amazing artists and educators, including yours truly. If you're interested in improving your comping, make sure to check out my course, Exploring Melodic Jazz Comping, available on TRUEFIRE now. In this course, I'll demonstrate and break down 17 essential comping approaches using TRUEFIRE's interactive learning tools. We'll work on crafting more sophisticated comping parts using drop-two voicing, chord substitutions, approach chords, diminished concepts, and voice leading. We'll also dive into triadic approaches, partial chords, using scales as chords, and the art of borrowing notes and dominants. You'll learn how these melodic comping approaches can be artistically applied using backing tracks based on the changes to popular jazz standards like Autumn Leaves, There'll Never Be Another You, and All the Things You Are. The link to the course is in the description of this video. Now let's wrap up today's lesson and see what our idealized chorus of rhythm changes sounds like after spending some time working out of the PDF resource. Last week, I shared an etude that I wanted to act as a preview for what an ideal rhythm changes chorus should sound like once you've spent some time practicing this language using the PDF resource material. Now that you've got an idea of how you can go about doing that, I want to share one more. This etude is going to be strictly made up of the examples that we went over today. If you're looking for more though, I've compiled a handful of my favorite examples from my own practice sessions over the last week into the PDF for today's lesson. I hope you guys can see how valuable it is to practice with restraints around your improvisation like this, and just how much we can learn by practicing this way. Here's the etude for you to take a listen to now. Thanks so much for sticking around all the way to the end of the video. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this follow-up to last week's lesson. It's not often that I split lessons across multiple videos like this, but I figured given how dense the PDF resource from last week was, that you guys would really benefit from some further depth. As always, if you did find today's lesson helpful, make sure you give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications too. If you want to get access to the PDF for today's lesson, you can grab that along with the whole back catalog for all the videos on the channel for as little as $10 a month over at my Patreon page, or by just hitting the join button right here on YouTube. A special thanks goes out to Ron Maestas, Alf Collins, Juan Doming, Rutheniio Fiuza, and Carlos Fernandez for being studio fans. I really appreciate the support. An extra special thanks is due to these studio members for their support as well. Tomas Jacobson, Robert Muldowney, Mark Eslick, Addie, Carell, Robert Allaire, Daniel Alvarenga, Robert Cody, Robert Berlin, Harvey Perry, Al Moreni, Mike, Christian Cummins, Lambert, Taehyung Kim, Gregory Chu, Vaughn Davis, Nick Hess, Louis Maiden, Brendan Kelly, Stephen Moore, T. Colston, Torino, Andrew McBride, Aldo Fonseca, Nikita Sketchkov, Michael M., Jason Paul Dubois, Ron Askew, Lawrence Beer, Raymond Nagloro, James Seabury, Bruce Wood, Larry G., Bill Benfield, Benjamin Dockstader, Sean Lepore, Severus Guo, Paul George, Stephen White, Salkai Zoltan, Apollo Strolevert, Justin Fisher, Melande Kaiser, Tyler Kosarik, David Wertman, Todd Stupnik, Zé Suarez, Gia Theobald, Artie Sanchez, Louis Rosen, Stephen Prager, Aaron Walters, Skemster, Everton Armstrong, Stephen Schwartz, Max Irwin, Patrick Caron, David Zuckerbraun, and PH. An extra special shout out to Jazz Luminaire patron Bill Jacob. Thank you guys all so much for your continued support. I'm David Shore, and thanks again for hanging with me at the studio today. I'll see you guys next time.